Welcome to Blind Shovel, an arts and music podcast. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Jessica Hans, firefighter and fine artist. Enjoy.
Jessica, 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 Hans. Jessica, 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 Hans.
Michael?
Yeah. Hold on one second. I got some
Okay.
dongle issues right now.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
It's frustrating.
We call those chingas or chingadera.
Who's we?
The Wild West. The people out in the Wild West.
You just got out of work, right?
Yeah, mine are working.
No, you just got out of work.
Oh, yeah, I just got out of work. Yeah. We work 8 a.m. to 4:30. However, we are supposed to be PTing from 3:30 to 4:30. And I was like, nah, I'm not going to PC today. So I could take the call a little earlier.
Physical therapy?
Physical training,
Oh.
like running or hiking or going to the gym.
So this question that comes to my mind, and it's, why is art not enough? Why do you have to fight fires and things like that?
Sure. I think about that often too. There are a lot of different reasons. So I do a lot of public service with the work, and that's really satisfying to me. I think that was one of the first things that appealed to me about the job. I'd been working creatively for a decade, probably primarily working creatively for a decade, and honestly felt like it was really self-serving. I found that working creatively, I was selling my soul in a way that didn't feel good. At least it didn't feel good to do only that exclusively. I needed to find another outlet. You know, making art was a hobby very early on, but then I started relying on it for an income. I monetized it, and then I went full throttle into kind of self-employment, and then I needed to make work to sustain myself, and then I supplemented with freelance jobs. But yeah, it just wasn't good for my soul to only do art all the time. Go ahead.
If I can ask, because it doesn't look from the outside that you were necessarily selling your soul, since that's a strong sentiment, but what aspect of it was soul selling that it had to be consistent and on demand?
Yeah, it had to be consistent. I think at the time when I was working the hardest and making work, a lot of it was production, ceramics, and going to like higher end boutique stores. And I think that retail honestly doesn't appeal to me at all. Like, consumerism is the worst, and I hate capitalism. And I felt like there were some projects that I got involved in that the end goal was just to get like more product to consumers who maybe really didn't care, what went into the making of the thing, didn't really care about the process. It was just like an item on a shelf in a cool store. And yeah, maybe from the outside, it didn't seem like I was selling my soul, but it just like, it meant so much to me to stay on top of, what was cool and what was hip, that it was just like consuming my mind all the time. and I didn't really have another outlet. But back to the whole, it started out as a hobby and then turned into my career. Like that was the only thing I did. I just made work all the time. And I was like, dang, well, I need another hobby because I can't just work all the time and like think about making art all the time. So I started rock climbing and was like, oh yeah, this is cool. I'm really into this. And decided that being outside makes me really happy. So I started thinking about different ways that I could, continue my art practice, but have something else going on that enables me to be more physically active. I also really like manual labor, be more physically active and be outside. And then it just kind of fire fell into my lap, sort of. I drove through a huge fire out west in 2017 or 2018. And it's a very remote part of northern Nevada. And I was on a gravel 2-track road, like trying to get up to Boise. And I just happened to be on this road. But there was like a 35,000 acre fire burning. And then like 100 different people holding the line, like holding the fire line. And there were women in there and older men and just like all kinds of different people. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is what I want to do. And, work in fire is seasonal. So it enables me to be really focused on land management, fire ecology, and firework in the summertime. But then once fall hits or once the rain comes, it's a dead stop and I can just go back to being creative for however many months out of the winter.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I had a similar thing with fabrication and manual labor and just trying to build things people actually needed, albeit like I still try to build objects that are beautiful and for sale. So there's like, it's not as pure in that sense, I would say. But that's kind of the answer I suspect, I think it's like, I've thought about it for a long time, why fine artists end up on an island. And I think it's because there's this particular ideal of self-expression, which is deeply overrated. And I think it's actually becoming more and more foisted upon people as like the North Star you should aim for. And I personally just don't feel that it's complete enough to satisfy someone.
Yeah, for me, it's not enough to satisfy. There are niches within the creative world that are so satisfying, certain individuals that you have collaborated with or people that you have just like maybe shown work with that you really connect with, and certain communities are very special and unique, and that is satisfying.
Yeah.
But I think that I found that I am happiest doing the land management work, being outside in the forest in really remote areas. And that's like all encompassing, like the most satisfying thing in the world. And I still think creatively constantly, I think of fires as a sort of creation in the way that it transforms the land. Fire is alchemical. And then the process that occurs when a wildfire rips through terrain and the transformation that occurs afterward, like that is insane. That's so monumental to look at. And then you see a charred landscape and the aftermath. And it's like a whole world of things happening, and it's so beautiful to look at. And then, what happens after that, all of like the blooms that will come up in a burn scar area that's like seen precipitation shortly after. It's super cool.
Yeah, I mean, that also brings up this thing that's interesting to me where there's this false notion that artists have cornered creativity. And like I work with a lot of contractors and blue collar people, and it requires a high level of creativity and persistence and intelligence, etc. There's this real interesting distinction, as if like the artists have the monopoly on creative thinking. Meanwhile, they often have a monopoly on just frivolous thinking, a kind of thought detached from practicality, which is what I was missing personally.
Yeah, kind of. And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus because ultimately, you know, everybody's living their own life. But by my stepping outside of the art world, like moving across the country to remote desert towns, I connected with all of the blue collar people, and I'm doing, you know, the same sort of intensive labor jobs that the townies are doing here. And yeah, I've learned so much. You know, I felt like I was living in an echo chamber back east and was just kind of regurgitating the same school of thought as like all of my friends, but was not exposing myself to different perspectives.
Yeah.
So that's been so important to me. And it gives me a huge appreciation for all different types of people and all different ways of living.
Yeah. That's the irony. It's a very, very weird. I'm happy to throw people under buses if it if it's true. I just think it's true. Like, we're social creatures. I've seen artists literally deteriorate, you know, from the activity, and I don't think it's a coincidence. I've tried to figure that out for a while. Like, are artists mentally unstable because they're open and there are all these ideas rushing in, or is there like a weird stereotype that they pursue and that their colleges reaffirm when they literally don't have any type of physical activity or emphasis on health or sports or eating? The division is so strange to me. Like, I went to an art school and I always loved sports, so I was like very frustrated by the.
Yeah, you're like, because sports are so uncool.
Yeah, but then they became cool at some point. Like, but sports are the best, and I boulder as well, but I love the shame and success and victory of team sports, because I feel like you learn so much about human psychology and understanding like what you can and can't control.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the cool things about the job that I'm in is I work with a crew. Like, I work very closely with my crew for 6 months out of the year, 9 months out of the year. We like eat, sleep, and shit next to each other for like days on end. You know, we're constantly around each other and are like, have to be so in tuned with each other's moods and stuff, because you need everything to flow smoothly when you're on an assignment, because you don't want anybody to get hurt. And that camaraderie, like, sure, there you can access it in the art scene, but it's like it's not quite as close. And like, I imagine it's very similar to a team sport where you're just like, this is my team and we are dialed. And if we're not dialed, then we like have to get there and everybody has to be on the same page.
Yeah. And I think there's also I do believe artists have the kind of demagnetizing thing going on where like they can't quite enter into a group that comfortably. So it kind of de-incentivizes them to do so. You know, like at least I feel like every time I talk to someone on this podcast, they say something like, I've never really felt to be a part of a scene or something. Like, I'm always on the outside of some way of thinking or some way of drawing or creating.
Well, I think that is what makes an artist, because they are, you know, there's something within them that allows them to identify with more than one genre or more than one landscape or more than one culture. And it makes them so special because they're able to bring something from the other side into a new arena. So maybe that's like something that is unique to artists, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe. Do you call yourself an artist?
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I kept going back and forth, like, what do I like put my professional title as on Instagram, or, I'm not on Facebook or whatever. And I'm like, do I put firefighter? But I'm not going to do that. And I think of it as like, I see everything through the lens of an artist. Like, I'm a sensitive person, and, my experience with the world is creative. So yes, I call myself an artist.
Okay. So that's definitionally what you're going with for an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have like a very kind of dry definition at this point in my life. So it's like whatever you do most of the day, that's what you are. And so I've been an artist. I don't know if I am one right now. That's like, because it's so weird, people work, if you want to rag on capitalism, I'm still like confused about other systems and if capitalism is the best or worst, etc. But, people mostly work their entire life. And so like whatever your job is, you're kind of just like, that's what you are,
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. I guess I just won't ever let go of, thinking creatively, because it is freeing for my mind, and I use that approach when I'm out in the field doing, firework, or today we had to dig this lady out of the snow, like higher up elevation. And it's like, all right, what tools are we going to need to get this woman out of the snow? Like, are we going to have radio communication up there, and all of these like different configurations? And that's creative. We have to like hodgepodge all this stuff together, like figure out a truck that has a winch on it. And like, it's all creative ingenuity, like trying to troubleshoot these random problems.
Right. But it's interesting because like, that's where I almost want to go backwards, where it's like, okay, you're an artist when you mostly make art, but the reason I want to do that is because there needs to be some respect put on other shit, because it all is creative. Like most real jobs have a lot of creativity, but most people would be super uncomfortable saying that they're artists or creative if they're just digging a woman out of snow, if I understand this.
Yeah.
I don't understand how you go from fire to that, but that's cool. And you know what I mean? Like there's like this weird way where even when someone's really good at something, we call it the art of. So there's a strange conflation that I think is largely semantic, where people suddenly think, oh, the highest thing you can be is an artist. Obviously, if you can transcend the limitations of the everyday functions of being a carpenter, you're an artist. But
wow.
You know what I mean? It's just like, it's just semantic, and it confuses people. And I think that's why there's more and more people who think they want to be artists. And I think that's like a really bad thing, personally, because there's nothing worse than a bad artist, in my opinion.
Can you elaborate?
Oh, because it's like a very self-centered thing. And when it at its heights, it transcends a lot of things, like I think a great artist does give a lot to the world. But like a bad artist is often lost in delusion, serves the society in no functional way, and has that sense of entitlement that comes with being an artist anyway. And, it's a very luxurious identity. And most artists I know, I don't feel that they chose to be artists, but that it is simultaneously a blessing and a curse that has been foisted upon them. And they're kind of just trying to figure out how to live with that thing. And
sure.
Yeah, it's not like a fashion, but of course, when a culture enters a decadent period, I think, I don't remember if you went to art school, but it was pretty obvious to me, like, 90% of these kids just got D's and still want to be viewed as cool and probably want to do drugs and whatnot. So like they went to art school.
Yeah, I did go to art school, and yes, and they continued doing that during art school. That wasn't my motivation for going to art school. I just was like, I don't what else I can do. Like this, I can make things all the time, and that works for me. But otherwise, yeah, I don't know. I was like, oh, I like linguistics, but what the heck am I going to do with linguistics? Like be a teacher, read books? I don't know. That's a little too much.
But could you not make art, you think?
Yeah, I think I could. And I have been, I'm in a funny place, right? I could not make art. And I'm kind of like grappling with that now and my career decisions within the Forest Service. Basically, there is enough like freedom for my mind to wander out here in the West, that I could not make formal art, but still express myself in ways. Like I have been working on a garden in the back of my government housing. We have a really beautiful yard, and I've just been going to town on this garden. And I'm like, if I, for whatever reason, couldn't make quote unquote art, there are all of these other things that I could do to get involved in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's good, right? So like, I think there's a fear. I've talked to artists about this a lot. Like, it's almost like a mistress around the corner. Like, oh, what if I would be happier not making art? You know, what if I actually was really happy doing X, Y, or Z? Is that some kind of infidelity to this craft? But
oh my God. So when I made the decision to take this job and like step away from having a proper studio, it was horrifying. I was like, I'm letting go of this thing that I worked so hard on, but that's all ego. You know, I'd spent a decade like building up a reputation and building a studio practice and sustaining myself on it. And, stepping away from it was like stepping into a void, and it's really scary. But I think that it can be really liberating to find other things that can satisfy you as an individual. And then you can take that back to your art practice later, and it will be that much more wholesome.
100%. Yeah, I think there's a calcification of identity that occurs in modernity where like we forget how complex the lives of artists in the past were. You know, they go to war, they'd have pneumonia for 10 years, they'd have children, they do all this shit. And there's this like tendency for everyone to want to be one thing that others can easily identify and essentially commodify or feel safe with, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's at the heart of that problem. But the way I view it is just as a relationship should come from a place of not compulsion or need, it should come from a decision to be with someone. The same thing should be true for art, I believe. So you shouldn't be in this kind of position where you have no other alternatives in life and you feel that you have to be this thing. Because I don't feel that this is a decision to be an artist. That's kind of like a life sentence to be one.
Yeah.
That eats at you. And also, the lives lived of our generation. It's debatable if I want to see how that's processed through art. I'm not really interested in the opinions of 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds, and I don't know what they can bring to the canvas in some sense. That's a tricky thing for me, you know, like, again, we're in a weird phase of civilization, and what an artist is quite confusing to me.
Yeah, I totally understand. And I don't know what direction to look in terms of, you know, finding an outlet for the arts that is wholesome, so to speak. You know, working with children in the arts is very fulfilling. I think that is a good way to be involved, because it just, you know, on the purest level, like giving kids the space to express themselves totally freely is important. And the same thing, well, and it doesn't have to be just children, you know, people of any age. So if we cut out high art from the thing and just like let people explore things that they want to make, like using their hands to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, that's the two things, right? You're either, and if I'm creating a binary, like you either spend most of your time producing or consuming. And that distinction is far more important to me because, and first of all, I believe there's good consumption, right? There's correct ways to consume food, products, etc., consciously.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's negative, mindless consumption. But I still find that production is a far more elevating practice. And what I thought as a young person was, oh, I like to draw. I'm getting validated for drawing. Then I get older. I keep drawing because it's my identity. So I assume like, oh, drawing is the thing I do unto itself. And then as I became like 30, I realized, no, drawing was just a way of thinking visually on paper. And actually, I'm much more satisfied thinking of myself as just a person who produces and creates things. I don't want to say creative because there's a weird tech vernacular to that term, I find. But like, I think that's what you're saying in some sense. Like, there is so many, and what's funny is like this is what humanity is to me. Is like whatever you encounter in a divine sense when you are creating a garden, art, creating community, etc. That's all it means, largely, to be alive. And it's partially why I'm horrified of the future. One, because consumerism will increase. Two, because AI will supplant, I think, artists as a unique feature of humanity. Because I don't think the humans of the future will be able to tell the difference. I'm rather cynical about it. But I think that's like, I don't even believe in making kids more creative in an artistic sense. I just believe in bringing people back to that notion that like creating or producing things yourself is a deeply satisfying.
Yeah, definitely. And if it means like dismantling the whole art school infrastructure, gallery infrastructure, and like explaining the lack of import it has, and then giving people skill sets to think creatively and problem solve in the way that artists know how to do, because they, we understand a medium, we learn a medium, and then we can build with it. I think that would be a good trajectory for the arts.
Yeah, that's that's another interesting thing I learned as I got older. It's like, well, you can really like something. Like I really like making comic books. But you can feel, and I actually like the comic scene mostly when I was in it. But you can love making paintings, and then you can also find that the world that surrounds it is filth and it doesn't align with your values at all. And you have a decision to make in a weird way where it's like, you have to be comfortable engaging with those dynamics of your career, the social components and the structure that it exists in. And I think I don't envy that kind of problem, because I remember selling at my gallery, like, and realizing, oh, this one's going to go into a storage container. And talking to a painter about that, and he had just become either numb or comfortable to the idea that this was like an investor mentality, and that's why I just stopped with that whole thing too. It's just like I didn't love that idea, and I wasn't comfortable enough with it. But maybe if I was making millions of dollars, I would have found a way to be comfortable with it, if I'm being brutally honest. Yeah,
sure. And I completely agree. And this was, again, like the number one reason why I stepped away from it. Well, one, I would have had to continue working super hard, and I don't know that I ever would have gotten to that point as an artist where I was, making those kinds of sales. But I don't want to cater to that industry.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a public servant at this point, and it's so satisfying because I've built up this skill set to get people out of bad situations and bring people up beneath me to teach them how to do the things that I'm doing in the work with the Forest Service. Yeah, and it just feels more supportive to the earth, supportive to our communities to be in this position rather than trying to hustle through and get a gallery show and then sell a bunch of stuff to somebody who's going to put some things in a storage unit.
I think the word service is the thing I latch onto, and that's where it's hard with the fine art pursuit, is to find that component of it. Because if I'm honest, like, you can do that in a very ham-fisted way where like you're trying to make your art serve like this very particular social function. And then it kind of almost starts to feel like propaganda to me, where like, because fine art is largely, I like the frivolity of it. I like that it's not telling me what to think or trying to show me a vision of the world that's better. It's like amoral. But then you get caught in that. And for me, there wasn't enough service in making like really weird comic books that were for myself. Like maybe, maybe it made people happy, like weirdos like myself. But it wasn't tangible. Like, oh, that person, like I'm literally just helping that person. You know what I mean? I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I am wondering, in your experience, do you feel like you have made enough comics?
No, but I also feel like I'm actually working on one now in my spare time. Like for an hour a day, I just draw. But do I feel that I've made enough comics? That's an interesting question, because there's like this supply and demand within myself that I have to ask myself about. But I don't think that I was meant to make comics in the last like 5 years, because one, I just felt that the well was dry in a way that I never thought it would be dry when I was like 25. But you might say like the life well in that scenario was dry, and then the art well was high, and then it went down. And it's like I need to kind of bring some water over back and forth. And so have I made enough? No. But like, I think I accept the finite reality of life, and that there's more to it than like putting numbers on the board in respect to comics. You know, I do dream of like splintering myself off into infinite versions who could just make comics forever. You know?
Yeah, I gotcha.
Just imagining what he would make. But, you know, I think death is interesting and tragic, and I have to accept that part of this life is understanding that balance. It's part of why I interview people with kids, because they made a decision that is very time consuming, that isn't art related. And I think that's a beautiful thing, but I think it's a thing that's usually very discouraged as well. And I think it's valiant and in some ways heroic if they do a good job at both. I think it's really, really difficult. But in long, I don't feel like I've made enough comics, but I also don't feel that I should force them, because that's something I started doing whenever I got attention. I wouldn't say I was getting money for my comics, but I was getting attention. And I encountered the same issue you spoke of, where it's kind of, it's more like deadline and discipline related. And I think discipline is great. I think, I don't think that's a bad thing. So, I will say maybe I was a coward and I just like didn't know how to respond to a small level of notoriety. I'm completely open to that as well.
Okay. Yeah. I love attention. So I don't know. Whenever I started picking up notoriety, I was totally game. I was like,
Okay.
yeah, I can handle this. And it's a challenge in and of itself to basically operate a small business. Uh, so that can be really fun and interesting. Um, but yeah, I think that I have made enough ceramics for the time being. You know, I cranked so much work out between 2013 and 2019 that I'm like, enough of me physically exists in the world that I don't really have to do it now. And it's nice for me to accept that uh, and not feel so compelled to need to add to that at this time. It might change later. I also have a floor loom and I'm getting back into weaving. Um,
That's cool.
so we'll see how that goes. And mostly that's just like exploring textiles. Because I love textiles. I love yarn. I love tapestries. So there are different ways that I can put things out into the world and explore, but I don't think that anybody needs any more Jessica vases
Well,
at this time.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting thing where, yeah, it's hard. It would be hard to say that they need more Jessica vases or more Michael comics as a need, and thus the process has to be satisfying enough on the artist side for it to continue.
Mm-hmm.
And when that falls off, it becomes fraught with danger, like even continuing to make it. It's
Yeah,
also,
exactly.
for me, I don't know, like my work was so strange that it couldn't even connect to the majority of my family. And then I started doing like furniture and build outs and CNC work, and boom, suddenly it's like there's a real connection and a real respect. And I know that there's some weakness in that notion, I guess, but at the same time, because you could say, well, you're just like succumbing to some very simple feeling about being accepted by the suburban individual or something. Although I don't.
That's fine, though.
Yeah, I don't
That's
subscribe to
fine.
this idea.
Okay.
I don't. I'm just like making a counter argument to my revelation, but like the idea that my mom could like what I make. I always use my parents as like a kind of it's a very teenage thing to do, but like, oh, if I can make something that they don't get or is shocking to them, it's like some step in the right direction. And this is like very much art school. I mean, it kind of does it with like kind of socialist notions, I feel, where there's like these classes of people or groups of people that should be satisfied by the fine art and others should be completely bewildered or offended by it. And I think that's like really pathetic as a perspective, largely.
So you would like it to be more accessible to the general population?
To each its own. Like, I accept that in my 20s I had to make the work I had to make, but I also accept that now as like a human. Like, I feel more human than I did when I was 20. I was like a abstract, you know. I think it has to be organic. It has to be genuine. It shouldn't be like reactionary or put on. And I think art school encourages a kind of false persona to sell people in the way of like, I just watch cartoons. I have 4 older brothers. I read comic books. Like, those are my influences. I'm never going to be deeply influenced by anything I learned about in art school, basically.
Okay.
And I accept that limitation. I also accept that it might not sell because I don't like oil paint, because I don't, like, it's just like, that's who I am. I'm maybe not as malleable as I hope in that way. I think fine art has failed largely. I think there was a certain strain of thought that embraced the notion that like the blue collar individual was backwards and idiotic and couldn't comprehend transcendent art. And I think the opposite is maybe true, that academia created such a huge wall so they could sell anything it could muster up when married with the market and
Yeah.
no one could question it because there was nothing to question, you know?
Yeah, and it isolates that group of people from the other group of people, from the blue collar people, and that's not what we need as society right now. We need to come together, and we need to have more common ground than fighting with each other because we can't relate. Um, so whatever it takes to bring sides together, I think we need to really work on that.
Yeah, and nor do I want to, it's complicated. I don't want to be a proponent of instrumentalizing art. Like, I think art, one of the things that's dangerous about art is people use it as a way to convince or as an instrument for persuasion. And it's something I'm very against. In fact, I run an art center as the art director, and I tried to be really careful about that. I don't think art should be in the service of anything other than itself. So there's a contradiction maybe to what I was saying earlier, but what I mean is that it shouldn't be used as a way to Trojan horse other things, like smuggle in other things.
I kind of wish that I could do that. I kind of wish that I was so passionate about a thing, like some politic, that that I wanted to make art about it to share a message, something really monumental. But I don't have. I'm definitely not apolitical, but it's very personal to me, and I don't want to throw it on anybody else. And I don't want my creativity to be like, I don't want to express myself that way. But I see other people. I think I live a very privileged life, you know, and growing up in this country, I think that we are coming from a place of privilege where maybe we're not dealing with the same issues that other people are, or I mean, we're definitely not, obviously, but when I see somebody working to express something that they're so passionate about because they've been, let me see, can't find the words. They've been so oppressed that they need to get it out that way. I think that that's so special. And I just don't have anything that I need to share that way. And I feel a little weak as like I could use the arts as a platform to spread the message. But I kind of feel like I do that with, you know, my career trajectory with fire, where I had a creative background, and people know who I am. And I'm like, I made the step into public service. And I think that in itself can be a message. Like, look, there are other things out there that can be really rewarding and valuable to society that might be worth pursuing.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a complicated thing you just expressed. I think politics is maybe the lowest rung of thought. So I don't think it's a problem to have work that's apolitical. I think, you know, I don't know exactly how the rung works, but I think politics is downstream from, at the very least, philosophy, and probably spirituality or spiritual concerns. And I think, as you point out, there's like, it's kind of like this idea of creating community, which I think is largely bullshit. People didn't make community in the past. They simply lived in communities. And we are now artificially attempting to create things, largely with people we already agree with. And it never works. I've tried it a couple of times, and I find it to be, it's very thin and it breaks very easily. And and that's the same way I feel about work that is quote unquote political, or people who are political. Like, to live life in a certain manner surely sends the best signal or message to an individual. I wouldn't call that political, but I'm really not interested in people talking a talk or drawing a draw in a weird way. I'm just interested in what people do and how they treat individuals.
Yeah.
And the artist can get so easily lost in everything but walking the walk that's probably why it's appealing to both of us to just like, oh, let's just go do something. Let's go do this thing.
Yeah.
Yours is more noble because it's, again, I think it's more service oriented. I'm playing a different game, admittedly.
No, yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's whatever route we choose, but as long as we're aiming to serve a greater good, and not only serve ourselves, I think is the most important thing.
So these vases,
I
guess we should talk about the vases, huh?
I guess so.
You still make them?
Yes. So I moved to Utah in March for a permanent here, and I did not bring my kiln. However, I spent all of winter, like 5 months, doing 2 different ceramic residencies, and I made a ton of work there. A lot of vases and also a lot of sculptures. So I still think about them a lot. I think about containers for flowers, and I think about, these forms. I love the forms so much. It's my go-to shape to make. I love working on the surfaces, glazing. And I probably still will make them because it's just, it's so fun for me to work in that way. But at this point, like, I'm not doing it at all now because work gets busy and I don't have a kiln here.
Got you. How would you describe the difference between, I don't know how to put this, making the vases as a professional with deadlines versus making them whenever you have the time to do so, but without any...
Oh my God. Yeah. It's so liberating to be able to make the work that I want to make, to explore surfaces that I want to explore on my own time frame. It's total freedom. It's total playtime. Having deadlines and working on larger scale production was fun for me because it was a challenge, because I had to really timeline it out and get materials, make sure I have enough time for all the kiln firings and stuff. But just being able to play is so satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think if I could just continue working in this way forever, then I'll probably be fine.
So you accept... Well, I don't even know if this is true, but it's like actually a question I ask when people have kids, like, are you using your time more effectively? And 2, is your production dropping off because of them? Now, people give different answers, but oftentimes the truth is, like, there's a kind of energy to a compressed schedule where when you do get time to make art, you just explode with creativity. Now, convenient where, like, you probably are going to make less vases in your lifetime, obviously, because you aren't doing it all the time.
Yeah.
But I do find when I have time to draw now, it's much more precious to me.
Yes, definitely. So not having been able to work much at all last summer, and then being able to just only make work from October through December and then February into March, like, I was full throttle, like, so productive, made so many things. But then that's a whole other story. I was at a residency, so there's sort of an expectation to be productive during that time. And I don't know if I really liked it. But I also think that doing it for 5 months straight, I was just getting burnt out. because I was like, I have to use this time so wisely. I have to like really make a lot of stuff because I won't be able to so much over the summer. And that didn't feel so good. And the of it is I'm relaxed now. Like now that it's a little harder to come by and I don't have all of the resources here, I get really frantic about making things and feel like I need to stay productive all the time, but I'm trying to change my mind, like change how my mind works and just like downshift a little bit and just go a little bit slower and be okay with, reading a book or cooking or doing yard work. And taking, like if I don't spend an hour a day making something, it's okay because I'm doing other things that are filling the pot back up, replenishing myself.
Yeah, it's hard to know if you can change that about one's process. I think you can definitely like overload yourself, but I also I feel like I accept a certain level of I don't know how to word it. I wouldn't call it like frenetic energy, but I know that there's like I can't relax for too long. I'm almost suspicious of like vacation. So I accept that, right? Like I almost know like, all right, the mind needs to eat this much food. I need to set the plate early in the day for this much stuff. If I put less on the plate, I'm going to feel some level of shame or lack of fulfillment. And I almost feel like that's just like, I don't know. I'm curious. Have you found that you can actually change the way you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just going outside, going for walks. Because what's that?
I can't do that.
It's like my legs don't work. They're broken. Yeah. So I definitely think that you can recondition your mind to slowing down and feeling less of a drive to have to do things all the time. 100%. Not every day, some days I'm like, I have to do all of these things. And they're like little errands, but, yeah, but it's a conscious decision. You really have to do it. You have to decide to do it.
Yeah.
I've even, I go for really long walks and, most of the time I wear headphones, but I've been forcing myself to stop wearing headphones and just be more present. And I find that after all of it, like I feel way more chill. Like my mind is more quiet. And a lot of that is, like physical exertion. If I get myself all tuckered out, then, the anxiety's gone. Like the need to do all of this stuff kind of goes away because my body's tired and my mind can rest.
Right. No, I definitely understand that. I just live in suburban New Jersey, and nature it's not really the thing.
You got some parks. Well, I mean, when I lived in Philly, I would have to leave. I would leave the city and go, I drive for like minimum 45 minutes or up to 2 hours to get up to like Bucks County and go for walks in the woods and stuff. And I wouldn't do it that often, but I would try to do it once a week or every 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, shamefully, I just love humans and all the bullshit. Like,
I don't.
Yeah. Like, I'm a big fan of nature.
Yeah.
But I almost am using that term precisely, a fan. Like, I definitely feel it's regenerative aspects when I'm in it. But some part of me is just like, God. And of course I complain about humanity sometimes, but I feel some kind of pull towards the social world, even if I struggle with it. And so even when I had the brief periods of romanticizing living in like a cabin, I quickly learned that like, oh, this is just bullshit. You know, like I don't think I could do it. Like,
You're not alone. Most people feel that way, and that's why most people live in cities. Um, I've learned this about myself over the past, like, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years, that I'm so introverted, and living in a city wrecked me, but I didn't even know what was wrong. Until like after I already left. I was just anxious all the time, always stressed out. Took the Forest Service job on a whim and then realized that this was the best thing in the world, moving to a town of 600 people where the nearest like bigger town is a 2.5 hour drive away. I'm like, oh my God, I can finally like breathe. But people are different and have different needs. But I think, realizing what it is that works for you, you have to figure that out.
yeah,
And
but
then
I don't even know how different people are because like we have a type of, I'm not saying you're an idiot, but we have like because I had the same experience. Like we have an idiocy when it comes to living in cities where it's like, oh, stepping back, it's like, oh, really? Living in a shithole with constant random loud noises appearing with no trees around, with no natural cues made you feel shitty as a person, Like it's so readily obvious when you get out of it. I remember like going into Brooklyn sometimes. I've never lived in New York City, but being like, Jesus, like the sound of this train, which was so pronounced to me and so like quote unquote ignored by the people living there. All that shit adds up like crazy.
I think so.
Yeah.
But then I guess for some people, there's enough going on outside of that they are fulfilled, that they can tune it out because they're stoked about all the other stuff. I'm just such a fragile, delicate flower that I'm like, I can't handle this shit.
Yeah. I don't believe it. I just think like we can be conscious of it or we can be unconscious, but I just think we're not as adaptable as we hope as humans. Although,
No.
I do hear crazy shit where someone's like, yeah, I just ate pizza for 3 decades and I'm perfectly in health. So I could be wrong. Obviously.
I think we're very adaptable, but I think that people have lost. What's that?
I think superficially, like the top half of our health is adaptable. And then I think there's just like, you have to have the humility to be like, oh yeah, like actually living in this shithole that's very cheap to live in, is going to have a negative impact. And that sucks. There's real impact.
I think you have to be like hyper conscious of yourself, your needs, your surroundings. And then you can adapt. And a lot of people are not in touch with themselves in such a way. But they're capable of it. It just requires work on yourself.
Where are you born again?
Jersey.
No.
Yeah, Cherry Hill.
Oh, Jersey? Oh,
Yeah, Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
All right. That's
Barrington.
Still counts.
Still counts for what? It still counts as New Jersey?
Yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I was born in South Jersey, and I was born in Cooper Hospital in Camden.
Nice.
And then moved to the Carolinas when I was 4 years old. And I lived like on the border of North and South Carolina for most of my childhood. And then I was like 16 and we moved to Florida for 2 years.
Nice.
And then after I graduated high school, I moved up to Philly for school.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you're fortunate to have been born in such a potent, spiritually uplifting. It's raw.
New Jersey?
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's the most beautiful place on the earth, probably.
Yeah.
Such a special
I mean,
special place. I'm like a God's child because no, no. My dad lived in Cape May for a lot of my 20s, so I was living in Philly, but could go down to Cape May on weekends and stuff and go to the beach. It was super nice. I love Cape May.
Yeah, we got things.
Yeah, you got cows, you got tomatoes, you got corn.
You know, I just chose. I have a cool family, so, and they all live in New Jersey, so nature be damned. You know, that's just the trade-offs. You just
Yeah.
can't.
No, but there is. I mean, you're in Rutherford, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there is nature abound in Jersey, but maybe not in Rutherford. But Cape May was, it's not developed. I think there's a moratorium on development, and they keep the Cape proper like super pristine, natural. There's a wildlife refuge out there. So I got plenty of outside time in that area.
Yeah, I'll make a note of that.
Yeah.
Probably won't go, but I boulder, but I don't even go outside. I'm in the gym,
Yeah. Well, there aren't really many rocks in New Jersey. That's not true.
No rocks. No, I mean I could go to the Gunks, but
you could go to the Gunks, but Gunks doesn't really have much bouldering.
Oh no? Yeah, no, I'm still very much I just like the puzzle. I like the colors. I like the forms. It's like a aesthetic experience,
Yeah, for sure. So I started climbing because I was climbing in a bouldering gym and I loved it. And then I started sport climbing outside and I loved that more. And then I started trad climbing and had a crazy accident and had a 20-foot ground fall. I was like, I got to take a break from climbing. Not going to do this. But bouldering in a gym is so cool because it's safe. You have a bad. What's that?
That's the opposite of cool.
Safe? It's pretty lame.
Yeah,
but
we have a saying in our fabrication shop, and that's safety last. So we're wearing and breaking thumbs and things, but it's all worth it.
Yeah, hell yeah. I should incorporate that into my fire briefings. We go through our standard operating procedures and then the last one is safety last.
That's right. You got to live. You can't be suffocated by all these rules.
Yeah.
Well, look, I got to go. I'm screening this film.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for talking. This is I live out here with a bunch of blue collar individuals and I don't really get to talk about the art world ever. So this was a nice conversation.
Yeah. Good luck with the fires.
Thanks, man. Got to put them out.
I guess you do.
Well,
yeah.
Some of them we like to let burn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, man. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Music by Dory Bavarsky and Mingja Chen. Next up, we have David Henri Anderson.
Just